We got a guy who was one of the founding members of a drug cartel who went to jail a couple of times. He was an honor student at the University of Miami, down in Florida, and went to jail, like I said, for cocaine. And now he's a speaker, Ph.D. You got a lot going on, man.
That's a very interesting history.
Really
I bet this guy has a few stories,
You
too.
think?
So this will be good.
I am stoked about this. Our guest went from an honors student at the University of Miami in Florida to founding one of the biggest drug cartels in the world, dealing cocaine, and this was in the 70s. Now, I want to know this journey.
Quite a journey, right? People have some interesting life stories. This guy has a spectacularly interesting story.
Let's go to the AcuteHearingCenters.com hotline and hear all about it. Dr. Jorge Valdes, how are you?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
We're doing great. So you heard our intro there. Please get right into it. How in the world do you go from an honor student at the U to being a founding member of this drug cartel?
Yeah, and to make it a little more interesting, also at the age of 17, the youngest employee in the Federal Reserve Bank. So, the message I tell people is that we think bad things only happen to bad people. But, I mean, I was an honest student. I was clean cut, never did drugs, never did anything in my life. And I went to work for my accounting professor when I left Miami, and he asked me to do his Spanish clients. And the first one was a little grocery store that ended up becoming, the front for a group that became known as the Medellin drug cartel. I mean, when you see Narcos and you see all the series, when you see Pablo Escobar, I mean, these people didn't even surface till the 80s. We were there in 1976, bringing in 800, 900, 1,000 kilos of cocaine when the DEA didn't even have us on the radar. Because to us, we were like the Kennedys of the 21st century. It was only for the rich and famous, the Hollywood celebrities, thought we were doing nothing wrong. And took one wrong step or one wrong friendship, and the lure of money and power that attracts all of us.
And George, I've seen I haven't read your book yet, but I've seen the documentary Cocaine Cowboys. You've probably heard of it. And I was always struck by this one guy's giving this interview, and it's kind of similar to your situation. He's like, one day somebody basically offered me a couple $100 to drive, a bag of pot from this guy's house to that guy's house. And then boom, seemingly overnight, now I got a plane and I'm transferring, hundreds of kilos of coke. Do you recall, like, looking back, like one kind of moment of no return where you're like, okay, I know this is bad. I know I shouldn't go down this, but there was that temptation and you stepped your foot into it and that was it. Can you recall that?
Oh, yeah, exactly. It was the moment when I started doing opening foreign bank accounts for this group that I worked for, and they all of a sudden asked me if I wanted to handle U.S. operations in the United States. I was scared to death. I'm like, what do you mean U.S. operations? I don't even know what damn cocaine looks like. I've never done anything wrong in my life. All I want to do is go to law school, finish law school, graduate by 23, and by 30 be a millionaire, and I'd be happy. And I made him a stupid offer. I said, look, if you want me to be head of all operations, you got to make me equal partner, and we're going to be 20% apiece. I knew without a doubt they'd get this nerd, kick him in the butt all the way to out of Colombia, and I'd be free because I really didn't want to do that. Yeah. But all of a sudden, when they said, sure, I'm like, what the heck? I don't even know what drugs look like. I mean, how do you bring it in? Where do you sell it? I mean, interesting that you mentioned Cocaine Cowboys. I'll announce it on your show before anybody in the world has heard about it, but I just joined with them, Raconteur, who did Cocaine Cowboys, to do 2 major productions. Wow. Because here's the thing, we see all these stories, even those people in Cocaine Cowboys, they came very, very late. But there was a group in the early 70s that I was part of that was the beginning of all the drug importation, all the cocaine importation into the United States. But we're businessmen. And the thing about it is, you cross the line and you justify your actions, right? I'm like, okay, I'm not doing nothing wrong. I started doing opening foreign bank accounts because when I worked for the Federal Reserve Bank, I knew how to. And all of a sudden I'm making, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a month. And then when I'm making that stupid offer and they accept, within 6 months, I was U.S. head of all operations for that group that became the Medellin drug cartel. And we were importing 85% of all the cocaine that came into America at the age of 21, I was making between $1 million and $2 million a month, and I thought I had everything. But yeah, I was miserable.
So, George, let me ask you how the primary method of importing the drugs was it? I mean, all over the place. Was it through boats? Was it through semis? How was it done?
All right. So when I started, it was airplanes directly to the United States, and then that got a little bit tough. And then we were bringing it right through customs. We had 2 customs agents on the payroll. Remember, at this time, this group in 1977 is doing $50 to $100 million a month. You can imagine the amount of corruption that we buy. So we started bringing it in through our customs, and I get it in once a month to get this big old barrel. But even in today's world, I can tell you one thing. Listen, when I look at all the stuff that we're going to do in the southern border to stop drug importation, it's the biggest joke in the world. Number one, here's a wake up. They're never going to beat the cartels. It's impossible. I mean, you could kill. We spent hundreds of millions to kill Pablo Escobar, and the people that came after him were worse. So war on drugs is a joke. So in the United States now, how do they come in? I'm going to tell you how they come in. They come in semis. Customs, the Border Patrol agents, they have friends that are friends of cartel members. And if I tell you, hey, Rocky, I'm going to give you $50,000, you're making that a year, and all I want you to do is don't look at that semi too good. I mean, just don't look at it too much. So they come in tunnels, they come in submarines, they come in ships, they come in legally. So listen, if anyone thinks that we're going to do anything at the border, build walls to stop drug trafficking, it's the biggest joke. There's thousands and thousands of kilos come. How many Mexicans carrying 2 kilos to the Rio Grande that you're going to use to bring all the drugs that's coming in? We got to look at this and realize, listen, this war on drugs is a joke. We don't want to win it. It's 10% of the drug problem, right? 61% is pharmaceuticals. But it's a lie that we have been told, so that a lot of interest groups make a lot of money. Think about it. Mexico doesn't produce a single gun, but where all the guns come from, Mexico, for those cartels. And they're very sophisticated. And corruption, it is something that can be stopped. If I, in 1976, making $50 to $100 million, our organization spent $1 million, these cartels, El Chapo was making $1 billion a month. He had distribution all over the world. It is impossible.
Wow.
We better start focusing on the demand.
So, George, let me ask you. So, what finally happened that got you out of the business? I mean, look, you're a young man. You're a very young man, and you're making literally millions of dollars. What finally got you out of it? Did you get busted? Did you finally just say, "Hey, I can't do this anymore"? What happened?
Okay, so I was making $1 million a month, and then in 1979, I wasn't happy with that. So we decided we're going to expand to Bolivia, and I made a deal with the Bolivian government.
There you go.
And then we came, on my way back, we crashed over the jungles of Panama. I never got on an airplane in my life. I never was even around the cocaine at that time. But I had a meeting in Nicaragua, so I got on that airplane. We crashed. I was tortured. I was arrested in Panama by Noriega, tortured for 30 days, where I bled for 5 years every time I took a piss. But what ended up getting me finally was I had everything in the world. I dated the most beautiful women on God's earth. I had $1 million worth of cars, $1 million mansions. I had everything a human being could be, and I was miserable, and I couldn't understand why. And then a series of events that I detailed in my first book, Coming Clean, where with my daughter, I was so miserable, I just wanted someone to kill me. And I mean, if I reached the American dream, which is to have a lot of houses, a lot of money, a lot of women, I had it all. And why am I miserable now more than when I came from Cuba and I was hungry? So one day I just couldn't take it anymore. And in 1987, I walked away in such desperation that I thought I'd be killed within 2 months. Remember, we didn't have a very good retirement program in the cartel.
Not exactly a 401k rich environment.
Well, and George, expand on that. When you say you had all these things, the money and all the things that are attractive to that lifestyle, but you were miserable. What specifically made you miserable? Was it just the fear of losing your life and someone's going to knock you off? What was it?
You know what? Honestly, that is the most interesting thing, because I had no fear. I had no fear. I had no fear in Panama when I was tortured day and night. The thing with me was that if I thought, all of us are searching for meaning. All of us want to be happy. All of us are searching for direction in life. Well, the only meaning and direction that I searched for, coming from Cuba, having lost everything, at the age of 10, my father was very wealthy. He came to clean toilets for J.C. Penney's and losing everything. And the only meaning in my life was, I got to have. And the more I have and the richer I become, I'm going to be somebody. Well, I got rich and I had power. I had presidents bow down to me, and I was miserable and I couldn't understand why. And people were like, oh, we all want to be like you. And deep down inside, you look at yourself in the mirror and just didn't like what I had become. I mean, I treated women like garbage, and yet I adored my mom, who was the most sacred thing in my life. And I looked at my life, and it's how things begin in life. We go down the slippery slope, and, you know, you cross that line one time, and then it just goes worse and worse and worse. So when you get there to the top, and now I'm making $2-3 million, I'm not doing anything. One day, my maid says, George, can you move so we can clean behind your sofa in your office? So I moved the sofa for her. There was a bag with $700,000. This was 1977. I didn't even know what was there. So money wasn't it.
So George, you've turned it around, and you're lecturing now. You've got your doctorate, obviously. What's motive? I mean, it seems like you had it all, and you just want to keep people away from this thing. The drugs obviously disturb you. What's going on that motivates you to do what you're doing?
Well, of course, drugs disturb me, and I want to make, I'm 64 right now, and I feel like I can change the world. You know, they said that those that are crazy enough that think you can change the world can. I want to make a difference. I tell people, I speak all over the world, and I'm like, look, when the pages of history are written, is history ever going to remember your name? And I just believe that it will not, because of money, of power, of housing. Remember when we impact other people's lives. And we're living in a world that is so divided and so full of hatred. And I want to give these kids a chance. We live in the greatest country on earth, and our children are dying to die. And they're not dying to live. And I feel that the reason people do drugs, pornography, alcohol, whatever the case might be, is because we're trying to medicate a pain that is within us. And I believe that by sharing my story and by, giving principles that I learned, I call it the NARCO mindset, giving principles that I learned that allow me to survive the most horrific things in the world, we can make a better world, and we can become better parents and become better husbands and be there for our children and bring awareness to parents that, we abandon our children in telling them, hey, that is that vacation home or that wonderful vacation or that 3 cars. Our kids don't need none of that crap. Our kids need our presence that costs nothing. And the reason we have a drug problem in America, look at it. And look at the immigrant communities, look at the poor communities. They're not dying of drugs. I mean, the suicide and the addiction rate, horrific. It's in the affluent communities. And you ask yourself why. They have everything to win. They want to die. And it's because of that emptiness within it. The society says it can fill it with money, power for me, or, women, pornography, cheating, etc. And I'm here to say, look, what transformed my life was, I fell in love, man. I fell in love. I don't preach, even though I have a PhD in Bible and ethics. I tell people, look, when I talk to people, I say, I don't care if you're straight, if you're gay, if you're Muslim, if you're whatever the heck you are. I don't care. I care if you're soft dog. All I'm going to tell you is this. I was the most miserable of all human beings, and my life was transformed by this amazing love of a Jewish carpenter. And if the shoe fits, wear it. If not, buy another pair of shoes. But we just need more love in this world, man. We just don't need all this this hatred, where families are so divided. And, I believe that love will transform the most hardened of all hearts. And if we give our children love and if we give them our presence, it costs absolutely nothing. I think that we can transform the society.
All right.
The greatest country on earth.
With that, Dr. George Valdes, we appreciate it. Again, is there a website connected to your book?
Yes. They can go to www.jorgevaldez with an S. Mexicans are Z, Cubans are S, PhD.com. You can find my blog. You can see my YouTube channel. You can see my Narco podcast weekly on all the different sites. And I share raw stories. I mean, if people look at Narcos and they look at American Made and look at all that, ask yourself, who was there before this guy? Who was there when it all began? I share those stories that have never been told. And I share them raw. And I tell people from the bottom of my heart, my struggles, my journey, and how I was able to overcome and today be married, happy, 6 super successful children, and trying to impact the world and make this just a little better world, whatever I got left.
With that, we will let you go.
Good for you, man.
Thanks so much, man.
All right, guys. Take care. Have fun.
Take care. Great story.
That was good. Found a bag of $700K behind the couch.
See, now, I'm happy when I find 75 cents in my couch cushions.
It's in my pocket.
This guy's running across $750,000 going, oh, how'd that get there?